If you've seen me play out over the past decade or so, you may have noticed a wild-looking guitar strapped around my neck. Over the past 6 months, it's been roughly finished, and it's gotten a lot of attention. Because many people have asked me about it, and there has been an interest, I decided it would be a fun idea to give a tour of this magical beast. So let's start from the beginning. In 2002, my brother-in-law Joel decided to give me the gift of Tele for Christmas. At the time, I wasn't doing too much playing out except for the occasional church service. However, I was doing a lot of teaching. Now generally, I'm not a guy who likes to play stock guitars. Since my very first guitar, it's either been pre-hot-rodded or I've done it myself. Because of the fact this guitar was a gift, I had the intention of keeping it stock, and it stayed that way for a couple of years. But then I started playing more, and taking occasional gigs. As much as I've always wanted a Telecaster, I just didn't like the feel of this one. The neck was a bit too chunky, a bit too C-shaped for my tastes. More and more I realized I was leaving it home and playing my old standby guitars, usually one of my trusty Stratocasters. When I was turning 30, my buddy Mike, owner of Yachts Designs, decided to make me a wild new wood pickguard. He started with a great piece of ash and really used his creativity to come up with an awesome design. He then did a gorgeous multicolor fade across it, moving from a yellow to orange to red, then sprayed a pearl over the entire thing to give it a shimmer under lights. The finishing touch was a hand-drawn circle of fifths on the face. At the same time, I didn't want the guitar to be a case queen. Between how I got it and the awesome new bling of the pickguard, it needed to be played. That was why I decided that I had to make it mine and really make it something I wanted to play. The first thing I needed to take care of was the neck. Now around that time, I was heavily into John Petrucci's work with Dream Theater. I was spending a considerable amount of time studying jazz and classical music. I call this my Brad metal phase because I was collecting a lot of gear that lent itself to this style. So with that in mind, I began reshaping the neck of the Telecaster to have a comfortable profile for me. It was a cross between an Ibanez Wizard neck and a Fender Eric Clapton V-style neck. It's very thin for comfort playing single notes while contoured in such a way to make it very easy for chording. The guitar stayed like this for several years. Mike and I kicked around ideas on what to do to really trick it out during this time. Everything from odd tremolo bridges to LED binding. For him and I, this was kind of a project that never really found its center and never really went further. Around 2008 though, I decided I really didn't like the stock pickups anymore. I figured it was time to really update the electronics and add that third pickup that had been just an empty slot in the pickguard for the past 4 years. After going through most of Mike's electronic catalogs and looking at options and talking to dealer reps, I opted for the DiMarzio Twang King matched Telecaster front and bridge, mated to a DiMarzio red velvet in the mid position. During installation, we upgraded all the electronics to DiMarzio pots and switches as well. And that sat the way it was for another few years. It wasn't collecting dust, but it was in a suspended state of development. And then in November of 2012, I was asked to do a series of showcases down in Nashville at Tootsie's, with a band working to reach the next level. Obviously, I jumped at the chance and figured that I needed something that was appropriate for the task. I needed to finish the Tele, and quick. Luckily, Mike was right there to give me a hand, and he cleared his schedule to get it done. He showed me a few of the client guitars he was working on, and some had a great feature. A really nice scoop for increased access to the upper registers of the neck. He asked me if I wanted to go that far, and I said hell yeah, so off he went to carve my body. Cosmetically, I had a great pickguard, but it wasn't enough to make people stop and take notice. On the original solid bluish purple paint, it was kind of a weird combination. I told Mike that I wanted the guitar to go red. We originally planned on a solid red, but when the paint was stripped from the body, we found that there was a very nice laminate top and back hiding underneath. It would have been a tragedy to cover it up again, so I told him to dye it instead. In contrast to a solid color, the dye gives it a nice translucent finish. That was topped off with a House of Color clear coat that looks like a poured glass. Now it was the eye catcher I was looking for. But it still wasn't quite enough. To me, there was nothing more Nashville or Telecaster than seeing some of these guys with instruments tricked out 7 ways to Sunday. Think of Brett Mason, Marty Stewart, Jimmy Olander, or Steve Earle playing their hearts out on beat-to-hell planks of wood. They have the technique, but they also whip out a trick here or there. As I am none of these guys, I at least want a cool trick. Now back in 2000, I was playing on a tour and was in Cookeville, Tennessee at a little music store. They had this really nice Fender Nashville Telecaster with a B-bender in it, and I thought that was a cool toy. Unfortunately, at the time I didn't have the money, so it remained simply an object of my lust. I had mentioned this to Mike on many occasions, and he always kept his eye open for me. I was after a Parsons Green B-bending system for various reasons, and they were very difficult to find. But finally Mike told me he found a source for them. That's what I needed. I ordered up the B-bender and a new bridge, and we were off to the races. The last thing I told Mike was I didn't want the guitar looking showroom new. It needed to look like it's been around a few times. So he left a few dings and marks in the wood, and didn't take the finish quite as far as it could on the shine scale. The last thing added was a set of locking tuners that retrofit right into the neck. So what started out as a standard Mexican Telecaster really transcended its roots. It became anything but ordinary and turned into something special. It's a guitar that catches the lights fantastic on a stage and really makes people stop and pay attention. It has a tonal range that can easily capture everything from Haggard and Waylon, early Eagles, and modern country rock, all the way to funky 70s classics, and full-on rock and roll. It's a guitar that I recognize is way beyond my capabilities, but I'm happy to own it. If it weren't for Joel, I probably still wouldn't own my own Telecaster, since Strats always seem to catch my eye. If it wasn't for Mike and Yock's designs, the potential would never have been realized. Big thanks to both of these guys for making it what it is. And that's what all the fuss is about. Hopefully you enjoyed this exploration into a custom hot rod guitar, even a fraction as much as I enjoy playing this guitar every chance I get. Be sure to check out my buddy Mike's work at yocks.biz, and you can follow me in this guitar as I play with my band Beckley.